Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Neighborhood News Network, your home of citizen journalism. I'm Andy Dabala, and I'm joined by the one and only George Webb. George Webb, how are you doing today?
Really good, Andy. We're going to go right to the Joe Biggs video.
All right, beautiful. There's been an update in the Trump March 4th perp walk. And Joe Biggs, as we know, FBI informant Joe Biggs was involved in the perp walk, and George Webb made a great video on his Twitter. Joe Biggs' video exonerates Donald Trump. Charges for insurrection must be dropped. And we know the March 4th perp walk got delayed. So once again, investigative journalist George Webb is on the scene, and he is right about what's going on in our country. Here we go.
All of us.
Okay, hello everyone. This is George Webb, and this is in defense of Donald Trump. This will be exculpatory evidence for Trump, and it starts with saying who did it. When you want to defend your client, you don't want him to go to jail, you say who did it. You got to say Joe Biggs did it, and you have to say what he did, which is the gates. Joe Biggs did the gates, not Donald Trump. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Joe Biggs did the gates, not Donald Trump. And that's the point here, is Alina Habba was not doing this, trying this in the court of public opinion, and the insurrection case is coming up March 4th. And you have to make the case in the court of public opinion, and you have to make the case for the jury simply. Joe Biggs, gate 1, gate 2, gate 3. You'll see how many times I mentioned gates, and you'll see here that I met with Joe Biggs in the Christmas of 2019, I believe. And we talk about him being for psychological operations. We talk about him working for Stanley McChrystal. We talk about how he goes all the way back to the last person that saw the folks who wrote the book about Stanley McChrystal, Michael Hastings in Afghanistan. We talk about how he may have been inserted into that book to make sure that the classified information that was there was taken out. He was an embedded reporter with Stanley McChrystal. We had a long talk about this at the Trump Hotel, and you could see this coming with him being now positioned as Proud Boys. You could see that he was going to do the forced psychological operation. I had to be sure that I was where Joe Biggs was when he went over the gates. And Trump is still speaking here at 12:54 when the gates happen.
Pretty quickly. I think we got to fight now. So we got to fight here for sure. They're definitely going in the Capitol. They're going in the Capitol. They're starting the Capitol. They're definitely going over the gates. They're definitely going into the gates right now. They're storming the Capitol right now. They're definitely storming the Capitol right now. Storming the Capitol right now. We had a group that came in with orange hats that were looking like they wanted to make a statement politically by going over the gate. They went over the first gate. Now they're at the second gate. It looks like they've been stopped at the second gate right now. They're pulling and jimming on the gates. We got folks going over the gate here. Folks going over the gate here. We have some folks going in. So this is maybe like Battleship Potemkin. where they stormed the gates in Leningrad, and 10 days in October, 10 days in May. But they've definitely breached the second gate and now streaming toward the Capitol. I'm sure a cordon, we've got police coming in now this way.
And now here's footage of Joe Biggs now entering the Capitol at 2:14. And I would make the same point. You have to look at who started it, Joe Biggs, what happened. He went over gate 1, gate 2, and gate 3, and now he's in the Capitol. 2:14 here, and you see the guys going in. But remember, Trump doesn't tweet out till 2:24. So there's no way, and Trump doesn't have his phone, there's no way Trump can be in control of this melee. That's Joe Biggs's coat there that you're seeing. That's Joe Biggs right there going through. So there's no way that Trump could be in control of this operation. It's much more likely Stanley McChrystal, having a long relationship with Joe Biggs as a force psychological operator, would be in control of the situation. A very clear picture of Joe Biggs there, a very clear exoneration of Donald Trump.
All right. I also have another video on the other side of the gates that is that shows Joe Biggs simultaneously.
Andy, can I just make a?
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
George. No, you can make your comment, George. You can.
No, I was just going to say here that the important piece in any defense, ABC, PBS hired an ABC producer, and they made a 9-part miniseries out of this for the January 6th committee, and they spent millions of dollars. But even though they spent all those millions, we had a very simple story. Joe Biggs gate 1, Joe Biggs gate 2, Joe Biggs gate 3, Joe Biggs in the Capitol at 2:14. Trump tweets out at 2:24. Exoneration. It's not how much money you spend. It's not how many miniseries you make. It's how cleanly the defense's theory is and how you can prove your theory. And that's over. Now, we'll be talking about the other cases, but we win. I mean, it was up. They just pulled it. It's over.
It is over. They took the official March 4th perp walk off the prosecutor's calendar, so that Trump will not be being prosecuted. But I have another video here of Joe Biggs and the Proud Boys team. I'll pause it at a couple moments, and you'll be able to see Joe Biggs at the front. They'll stop it on him, but you'll be able to see behind him, like the orange hat spotted behind him as they go over the Capitol gates. Here we go. See if you just pause right here. You got one orange hat. There's another one that disappeared behind the flag. Another orange hat behind that flag. Right there. Oh, sorry, that was a bad pause, but there's like a line of orange hats coming and storming the gate, and we'll pause it on Joe Biggs and see all the orange hats coming. All the orange hats. And Joe Biggs will be up there. See him spotted for that. Orange hat. Military gear. Okay. Joe Biggs right there. All kind of coordinating. See the orange hats? You can see a line of them right up the front. My husband that's covered up with the mega hat. Right there. Orange hats right behind him. The Biggs right there leading the orange hats. Top inside in the crowd. Right there, Joe Biggs with one foot behind him after they scooped up behind Coach Webb. George is on the other side filming this. Joe Biggs following right behind him. Orange hat right there. And John Biggs. Joe Biggs. All right, so there's Joe Biggs on the other side of the gates where George Webb is on the backside. There's Joe Biggs right on the front with the orange hats following him. He seemed rather calm. He claimed he went in just to go take a leak and wash his hands. That was his defense, and he also claimed he was an FBI informant. But the Oath Keepers had FBI informants. There were informants within the Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping scandal. George Webb, there's a lot going on in this country with these FBI informants at the time.
This is great footage, Andy, and this is our point: as you focus in on one guy, you focus on Wellington in the Battle of Waterloo, you focus in on Napoleon, you focus in on the key people like Ney leading the cavalry charge. You don't focus on the whole battlefield and get lost. Right, that's what they want. You focus in on one person, it tells the whole story. We win.
And what do you have to? So we have all these FBI informants here. I just showed Joe Biggs. Enrique Terrio had been working with the FBI as an informant since 2012. Here's the Oath Keepers vice president, was an FBI informant months before the January 6th attack. It seems it was a FBI insurrection, and we have the Ukrainians there at the same time storming the Capitol. Are the Ukrainians working with Joe Biggs, you think, in these like moments, or is there kind of like a front operation, like a 1st battalion and then like a 2nd battalion to make sure the job gets done either way? What's going on here with the Ukrainians and Proud Boys?
Very similar thing happened in 2014 at the Rada, which is the capital in Kiev, and the Azov Brigade did a very similar operation. And what you want on the front is the people getting their pictures taken to be the Joe Biggs guys, because they're going to be the operatives that you want everybody to concentrate on. But then you send the Azov in for the servers. I think a very similar thing happened in 2014. This is how they caught the Black Ledger and got all the stuff Lyshenko got in the capital with the raid in Kiev. Here we go.
All right, I'm just putting graphics on the screen of all the different cases in the past couple of years there, where we've seen these major headline news stories, and lo and behold, a couple months later, there's always like FBI informants involved in there. And they're supposed to put a stop to these things before they happen, and it seems like they're actually instigating them and making them happen. And you're right, the 2014 revolution in Ukraine, they just like take the blueprints from what they do around the world, and they just used it on us finally for maybe the 1st, 2nd, 3rd time. But they're starting to use these for psych ops on us. And Joe Biggs is actually from North Carolina, where your psych ops station is at. Do you think he maybe went to the school there a little bit when he was, or he grew up around the school and knew what was going on?
Well, I was interested in his story because of Michael Hastings, and I wanted to know how he had become the only embedded reporter with Stanley McChrystal. So this is way before I ever knew Joe Biggs. I mean, wasn't going to be involved in Proud Boys. And he had said, hey, I'm the embedded reporter. We are telling the story, and we're conducting psychological operations, meaning that you use the reporters to say where the army's going to be, and then you watch to see if the terrorists move in. You know, you say you're building a new barracks someplace or a new airport, and then you watch and see if the terrorists move in. So it's a lot of misinformation. I don't want to give away any army secrets, but he's the one guy that's sending the information out. You can't have 10 different guys sending 10 different stories. You got to have one guy telling one story, and then you have special forces closing in. So he certainly was a part of psychological operations in the Afghanistan war. And then, of course, he writes the book. He's the last guy to see Michael Hastings. Michael Hastings is getting close when he's in with McChrystal. He's getting close to the biological weapons, you know, and this like, whoa, this whole thing is going to unravel. Let's go and let's take him back and talk about partying. Let's talk about how McChrystal's partying, and let's get away from this field reporting, because this is going the wrong direction. If the American people knew what was going on, it would not be a good story. So that's Joe Biggs's role, was to get Michael Hastings away from the action and get him back to the partying. And then Michael Hastings ends up writing the book called The Operators about that. And he was going to do a film series as well. And of course, he's killed before the film series can air.
Well, we saw in the video you had a little like a drink with Joe Biggs. What year was that?
Joe had many drinks. I had a glass of wine. I don't drink beer. I didn't at that time. Joe, boom, boom, boom. Joe could drink.
Was that 2019 though, or was that before then? Because it said he started working with the FBI in 2019, according to.
I think he was getting hired. He came up with these folks at the Trump Hotel. So Trump was definitely president, and he came up with these people that were doing border protesting. So maybe in 2018. But I was interested in the Michael Hastings story, and then they were going to roll it out. This documentary, they're going to roll it out with Peter Omidar's Intercept. And I keep forgetting the guy's name who was supposed to roll out that series. And then he died right before that. And Joe Biggs was the last person to talk to him, as told by Joe Biggs. Now that's a guy, they're saying, stay here, keep him here. Don't have him go anywhere. Don't have him talk to anybody. Keep him in this apartment in Los Angeles. Again, he's got the same kind of minder role. Now, I'm not saying he had anything to do with the murder of Michael Hastings, but I'm just saying is that how could you be in both places? If you're not fourth psych ops, how could you be in both places?
And here's Stanley McChrystal, who Michael Hastings was doing a story on. But all of this this work George was doing since pretty much we started Neighborhood News Network, since we did the reboot. George has been talking about, at least the very beginning of the first reboot show, George was talking about the March 4th Perp Walk that they were going to do. And all this research, all this work we've been doing on January 6th, and Joe Biggs and the Proud Boys, and George had video. Well, thank God you were there following the Orange Hats in. Addie Ads was there, and the rest of the Neighborhood news team as well. It all led to Jackson. Here, a little breaking story. Breaking: Jack Smith's election interference case against Trump has been removed from the court calendar and postponed indefinitely. The trial was supposed to be next month, March 4th, but it looks like the case isn't going to trial this year or ever. Big win for Trump. So this is what citizen journalism is. It scores another victory. We have Trump dumping Alina Habba recently. He's been listening to George Webb. He dumped Alina Habba. Now they've been watching George Webb and the Neighborhood News Network, and UM Peter Duke and all these other shows, and your Rumble channel, and they're like, yeah, we better dump this case. They don't have it as well. So congratulations, and you can take a little victory lap. You're 2 for 2 this week.
Yeah, and we're going to move straight to the folders and the pens. We destroy the case in Atlanta with just the ballpoint pen, a pack of 20 or 30 pens. We destroy the case, and then we destroy the case with a pack of 20 or 30 colored folders. So we have a pen defense in Atlanta, and we have a folder defense in West Palm Beach in the summer. But could you go to my just to show you how important it is to have the right story and the right narrative to knock down the big narrative. Watch my questioning of Donnie O'Sullivan knocking down the first Disease X1, right? And how he keeps trying to make it just about somebody who, and try to dissociate them from the live exercise. He's trying to dissociate the State Department people away from the live exercise. And watch how I'm trying to go back to the Disease X1, the R&D blueprint, Virginia Benassi, that he keeps deflecting. This never got out. This material never got out.
All right, here we go. Here's George Webb against Donnie O'Sullivan. Hopefully we can be 3 for 3 by the end of the week. We got till tomorrow. I actually count Sunday as the end of the week, but you know how that goes. Here we go.
Specific evidence you have that she is, as you described, virus patient 0?
There's a lot of circumstantial evidence, and then there's a source here that I cannot reveal, but I can walk you through the open source information. But I don't want to endanger my source, and I don't want to release anything classified.
So I know you've presented a lot of your thoughts about the coronavirus, the origin story more generally. But if we could just stick specifically to the Benassis, could you talk me through what proof you have that Masha Benassi has coronavirus and is coronavirus patient 0?
Now, first of all, I said that it also could be a vaccine. So I'm saying she's testing positive for the antibodies, okay? Patient 0 could be a group of people. It could be up to 375 athletes. I've always said this from the beginning, that went to those games. Now, the games I'm talking about are the Wuhan World Military Games run by the NATO. The U.S. team performs very poorly. They're 40th. And we're typically a world power that wins the Olympics. We typically win the military games. The whole team performs very poorly. But the key source that's public is a spokesman for the Chinese foreign minister. Chinese foreign minister has said that they want to produce the records for the U.S. athletes that came to Wuhan. And they believe that the smoking gun lies with the athletes from the U.S. team, and they want to produce those. And I didn't know that you're going to ask about Benassi specifically, but the Chinese spokesman for the foreign minister is the source.
Specifically on Masha Benassi, how do you know that she has the coronavirus or has antibodies, or how do you know that for sure?
I have a source at the Fort Belvoir Community Hospital, and she actually works I have someone saying that she works at the Fort Belvoir Community Hospital, and she tested positive for the coronavirus. Does she deny that she works at the Fort Belvoir Community Hospital?
She denies that she's had the coronavirus, that she has any symptoms of the coronavirus. She and her husband don't have the coronavirus.
Has Mike Pompeo given that information to the foreign minister? China is saying that the U.S. is stonewalling on the athletes' health records. Have they produced the health records for the Chinese foreign ministry?
So I think that the calling for the health records and the Chinese foreign ministry spokesperson you referenced was actually, I believe, citing some of the work you have presented. I just wanted to ask about matches, as you described them. She fell off her bike and she fractured a rib. She had a concussion. It was towards the end of the race. That's why she was breathless.
Sure. No, that's not what I'm basing my conclusion on. I'm basing it on a source saying that she tested positive or at least positive for the antibodies at Fort Belvoir Community Hospital. Have you seen her records? Have you seen her test that shows that she doesn't have those antibodies in her body?
The Benassis say that you're ruining their lives by spreading what they say is lies about them.
Okay. Has she told you that she is the courier for the Supreme NATO Allied Commander?
Are you comfortable enough in your understanding and in the evidence you say you have that you are publicly putting these people, the Benassis, through all of this? They are both living in fear at the moment. They've received threats. They've seen messages under your YouTube videos that have made them fearful for their lives. How do you feel about that?
About every time I go on the air, I say that violence should never be used. Never. And they're threatening anyone is not right. I'm a journalist. I follow up on leads. I cross-check. I present information. Matt Benassi works inside the chemical bioweapons program at Fort Scott Air Force Base. His mother wrote the WHO blueprint for bioweapons. along with a guy from Fort Detrick. Again, you have to present the whole story. You can't just present a victim side of the story or a perceived victim. I have been a perceived victim of somebody who's on the other end of this phone call. If you remember the story you did 3 years ago on me.
George, do you worry that by putting out a lot of this, your findings in the way that you do, that you're putting the Benassis, Matcha and Matt, that you're putting their lives in danger?
No, but I think that your reporting about me put my life in danger. I was going to talk to whistleblowers in Piketon, Ohio, that people were saying the uranium never got here, and we are only cleaning these cylinders. And this is another DTRA. This is another Defense Threat Reduction Agency production. I was doing that, and somebody drugged me into something that was happening on the coast. We did an interview with you. We recorded it. None of that information was forwarded. I was definitely made out to be some kind of right-wing conspiracy theorist, and I was in fear of my life. If you can imagine how I feel, then maybe the Benassis potentially feel that way. But I have a lot more evidence. I'm not a courier for the Supreme Allied Commander. The Supreme Allied Commander used a tool called ShadowNet to throw and weigh in on European elections, as well as the United States election in 2016, a bot. Your role at CNN is to go get the Russian bots, right? Yeah.
You mentioned that when we last reported on claims you had made, you don't view yourself as a conspiracy theorist. Is that correct?
No, not at all. I consider myself an investigative journalist. I think we all have a point of view. I try not to bring that point of view to the story. I had done stories on Fort Belvoir and testing at Fort Belvoir 4 years ago, 3 years ago, Donnie, 2 years ago, 1 year ago. I've been out there many times, and it's hard to believe, but it's going to turn out to be true. And I develop sources, and it's going to turn out to be true.
You've never spoken to.
I've offered on every live YouTube. I say I'd love to interview them, and if they want to.
Do you not think though, as you describe yourself as an investigative reporter, that you should really try and reach them and give them the opportunity to respond, like you're being given the opportunity now, before you go and accuse them of spreading this virus that has killed people?
How did I say they spread it? I just said patient zero. I just said testing positive for the antibody. That could be a vaccine. That doesn't mean they're contagious. That saying that they tested positive for the antibody is not saying that they spread it. I said that there's a small South Korean church, or a huge South Korean church of 300,000 people that are responsible for spreading it.
Do you feel at all concerned that without sufficient evidence, you are making claims about these people publicly that has led to them?
I've been in a much worse situation by you, and so I feel like I reported the situation responsibly. I think the American people have a right to know how this started. I think the American State Department and President need to produce this information for the Chinese. They're saying we did it. We're saying they did it. Everyone's lost their job, their homes, their businesses that they built up over their whole lives over this. The Benassis are not the only victims. This is not the time to paint one person who is in the middle and mix of all this, who's stonewalling on producing the information. It's not the time to make one person the victim when the whole world is being victimized here.
Who do you think is responsible for the virus?
Fort Detrick, and I'm going by people who work there who said they did all this transfection. I'm not saying it didn't occur naturally by walking up the genomic ladder from bats.
So you think it came from the U.S., not China?
Oh, no, there's a collaboration. Dr. Fauci wrote $750,000 checks from the University of North Carolina. It was called the USA Predict program. It was called 1,000 Talents program. Dr. Bavari has 4 startups with Wu. He worked at Fort Detrick. This is a joint development. It's a joint development between the United States and China. There's the purchase orders. I don't know how else you can see it. You can read the report that came out of this, 37 pages of exactly what they did.
George, I appreciate you taking the time to speak to me. Obviously, you have my email address and other contact details if you want to elaborate more on what were the questions I was asking you specifically to the claims you're making about the Benassis. But thank you very much for your time, and perhaps speak to you sometime again soon.
Yep, the NATO couriers aren't the only victims, Donnie. Thanks.
See you, George.
Okay, you can expect the smear and Donnie to victimize me yet again tomorrow in the paper. I've never said to threaten anyone. I don't believe in violence of any sort. But I don't believe that if there is a weapons program and you have a bio courier there at the games, and I have a source in Fort Belvoir Community Hospital that says they were either vaccinated or they tested positive before they left the games or when they came back. Look at CNN every day, anonymous sources. Every day with Trump, anonymous sources.
All right, George Webb. Great interview with Donnie O'Sullivan. Thank God you recorded your end of the interview. I like how you answer all the questions and ask him some simple questions, just deflect. And you talk about NATO courier. It seems like Donnie O'Sullivan might be one himself journalistically.
My whole question was, how can the government ask you for your proof of antibodies when you fly, when you go to school, when you put your kids in school, but we can't ask that for something supposedly at the epicenter of a world war? It could diffuse a world war if you just show your vaccine card, that you had antibodies or not, and we can't do that. That tells a lot.
And not to mention, there's a lot of things wrong with Fort Detrick. They were definitely cooperating with China. We've gone over that a million times. They've had lab shutdowns right before the coronavirus. Same thing that happened in Wuhan. They needed a lot of work on their ventilation systems as well. So the fact that Donnie O'Sullivan was trying to discredit the reporter instead of actually digging into the work and being a journalist himself and trying to figure out where the coronavirus came from. It's a bad day.
I would just add, Donnie O'Sullivan has to be the biggest conspiracy theorist ever because he's the one Trump Russia. And he's never said he was wrong about Trump Russia. He still believes Trump Russia. What is the bigger conspiracy than Trump Russia? So what you saw there was a real investigative reporter questioning a guy who is a conspiracy theorist, but it's George Webb questioning Donnie O'Sullivan, the conspiracy theorist, the Trump Russia conspiracy theorist. He said a 14-year-old, right, that did a CNN video of Trump body slamming the CNN logo was a Russian operative. This person, I don't know how if he didn't write a love letter to Hillary Clinton saying you should be one of the regents of my university at Queensland University, no one would know the name. If he wasn't a suck up to Hillary Clinton, no one would know who Donnie O'Sullivan was. No one. And that's the only reason they can't touch him at CNN is because he put her in at that university, and that was one of her lifelong goals, to be a part of the board of regents of a university. Truth be told.
Truth be told, and just staying on the topic of disease X and some of this reporting that we've been going over, Jeremy Farrar was actually our man at Welcome Trust and SEPI. Jeremy Farrar and the World Economic Forum was actually tweeting about disease X back in 2019. Can you talk about some of these posts you made?
Sure. Well, we said it was Jeremy Farrar at the Wellcome Trust, and then he was the real power behind Tedros is just a figurehead. We said that back in March 2020, if you remember. We said that the Wellcome Trust got the bids always 3 months before the WHO. We said the Secretariat was the committee that they put into the WHO. We said it was a clockwise takeover, and this was the first click of the clock in a clockwise takeover of NATO into the WHO.
And we had just the fact that this is what we're trying to figure out now. The same thing we got Jeremy Farrar tweeting about everyone preparing for disease X. And then after the coronavirus broke out, he was like, is this the disease X we were talking about? And all the research at Event 201, Johns Hopkins, World Economic Forum, Jeremy Farrar, he was pretty much involved in all of them. So when we say Trump needs to be aware of Alina Habba in the next disease X outbreak, that's why we keep looking at some of these same figures. Now, I was doing a little research on the school that Alina Habba went to, And it seems that Lehigh University seems to be one of these NATO schools. George, do you think with you were warning about Alina Habba maybe getting Trump with the disease X? We were just talking about Benassi being a NATO courier. Maybe she was a NATO courier that was gonna disease X Trump. I know she got him a little bit. She didn't do her job with the Ejon Carroll case, but how do you feel about Alina Habba maybe being a NATO courier? I'll just throw some graphics on the screen here of Lehigh and their cooperation with NATO while you're talking.
We went up there to Carlisle, if you remember, the War College. I can't remember if it was the Gettysburg charrette we did or the Carlisle charrette. We went up there, and then we did also the Maryland charrette. We went up to Carlisle, and we talked about the United Nations. All NATO exercises are run out of Carlisle, and I can't remember. It's a couple of years ago now, but we talked about all NATO psychological operations. If you're going to bring in NATO people, they have to be rehearsed in Carlisle. That's why we said the capital, as far as the Ukrainians coming in, is kind of the old hands and training the new fourth psych ops guys, which we said were pulled by the Navy Reserve out of District of Columbia. In order for the training to occur, you need to practice somewhere. And we said that they had closed down this area around the Pennsylvania State House, which has a similar shape to the Capitol. And there was rehearsals there, apparently, first gate, second gate, third gate. Now, if we get into that, we really blow up fourth psych ops, because it's now showing that how NATO is the training ground in the United States. That's also where Eisenhower was close to there, and the school for Butina was close to there at Gettysburg, if you remember, the Eisenhower Institute. So this is maybe blowing the top off the whole domestic operations. And we had tied the Atlantic Council and James Jones to Clearview. Remember, Berge worked for General James Jones directly next to, as his communications officer in Afghanistan. And he came up with that software, and he was involved in the 2016 election, pure, plain and simple. So we have direct evidence that the NATO is involved in election operations in the United States.
Yeah, they're all over these universe. Same thing like China and their 1,000 Talents program being kind of spread throughout the universities. NATO kind of has the same thing going on, and they run these little operations. George was just in Florida doing some work where Robert Malone and some of these nanoparticles, some of these coronavirus factories are at. And Central Florida has the same type of thing with NATO and their university systems. And Lehigh and Alina Habba have some. She went to school there in 2005, and she graduated with a political science degree. So I have a feeling that she took part in some of these United Nations courses going on. But speaking of the United Nations, we have some news involving Hillary Clinton's campaign advisor. We've seen John Kerry walking around the World Economic Forum, glad-handing with Klaus Schwab, getting into climate change and how we're going to direct the world exactly. What are the implications of John Podesta taking over John Kerry's role within the Biden administration and glad-handing with the likes of Schwab and the World Economic Forum from now on?
Well, when you put the president of Hillary Clinton for America into a government post, get ready for an operation. He was the president of Hillary for America, and the vice president was Huma Abedin. I sued him. We served him, and they collapsed the company the next day, Podesta and Associates. They were the key group with ARMZ, their group ARMZ, based in Moscow, the key group doing the uranium for megatons and megawatts and diverting it so that it didn't get to Ohio, and that it went to all these other countries, was brokered, and all the money came back in through a funnel company called Resources for the Future as kickbacks to the DNC. Now, there were other funds there too, the Humpty Dumpty Club with Mark Epstein in the Congress for betting on overthrows. But this is how it happened. And he ran Resources for the Future, RFF, with Bill Clinton.
All right. So be prepared for some more Clinton projects coming up within the Biden administration with John Podesta taken over. Maybe you think he might be running the Biden campaign coming up here pretty soon against Trump? Is that what he won't be taking part in that process at all? Just
No, the Clinton campaign.
or the Clinton
Campaign.
the Clinton campaign.
Joe's going to have a stumble. I'm just going to let everybody know that right now. Joe's going to have a stumble, and it's not going to be pretty. I'm not saying lethal, but I am saying a disabling incapacitation. And Hillary, this is the metadata. You got to read the metadata. And when you put Podesta in, it's the next tree to drop Hillary.
So just a couple more stories here. George is in a little public setting, so I don't want to keep them too long. We've seen some Elon Musk news lately. There's been a lot of corruption with Donald Trump in the court systems. There seems to be this attack on anyone that's for free speech or Donald Trump. This Judge Kathleen McCormick that ruled that Tusk wasn't allowed to pretty much receive his $55 billion Tesla compensation package. And this Judge Kathleen McCormick actually has ties to the Biden administration. Her old law firm, Young Conaway, they're actually a Biden campaign contributor, and Hunter Biden himself says that he knows the judge personally. What's up with this going on? We've seen Elon Musk buying Twitter and advocating for free speech. It's pretty much one of the only ways George Webb and citizen journalists can get their research out there. Is this just more of them trying to hurt the free speech, the Trump right-wing big guys, George Webb?
Well, I do think $55 billion is a lot for a compensation package. I mean, that's kind of ridiculous. I think 55 million is about the most any executive should make, not 55 billion. But I guess it's his company; he can do what he wants. But if Twitter really is losing money, I think he should take a pay cut. I wouldn't be trying to. So I'm not. I think this is kind of one of those stories that is a kind of a poison red meat story.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't really put too much. I'm all for cutting his salary back to 55 million. After he did that 2 hours with Alex Jones, I wanted to cut it back to $5. So yeah.
All right, so that's why I like to bring some of these things up. We see a lot of stories in the mainstream cycle. A lot of us are on Twitter, and there's a lot of bots on Twitter. There's a lot of right-wing FBI conspiracy theorists on Twitter, and I like to kind of throw them at you, George Webb, to see which ones hold water or not. And if this one's kind of just a little misleading one, and just put it on the back burner, we'll go ahead and do that. But Trump the other day actually talked about his bloody hand, George Webb, and he kind of said it was he denied having a bloody hand at all in general. What I have the little video here. What say you about the bloody
Let's
hand?
go ahead and play the video first. Yeah.
Here we go.
It looks like it's better now.
My hand?
Yeah, remember what happened the other day?
What was wrong with it?
You didn't see the photos coming out of Trump Tower?
No.
There was okay.
What was wrong with it?
The other one. Yeah. Okay. You don't want to tell us what happened with the hand?
Nothing. Maybe it's AI.
Your hand. Is it better?
So Trump's saying maybe it's an AI hand. We're claiming here that Trump washed his bloody hands of the deep state. He got rid of Alina Habba. This March 4th perp walk is kind of hitting the wayside. So I think it's just Trump washing those bloody hands. What say you, George Webb?
It's not real, but figuratively true. I do think that they ran Hope Hicks at Trump. They know that that's his weak spot. I think Helena Abba is the same thing, and that's why he clung to her as representation when clearly she was the last person in the world you'd want to represent you. And then they were going to roll forward into this March 4th thing with her. So that was going to be 20 years for him. So yeah, I do think, and I think that's why Melania is taking separate cars now. And yeah, mm-hmm. There's definitely an estrangement going on, and but But I don't want to get too much into that because it's not really the news. It's kind of like gossip. So yeah.
TMZ Live with George Webb.
I didn't know Billy Bush was related to the other Bushes. So, that's how far I am down the news cycle. Yeah.
So last story here on the docket. I believe Addie actually wasn't Addie in Venezuela. I can't remember what country he was in.
I thought he was in Brazil. No, wait, he was in Venezuela. I apologize. I think he was in. I can't remember.
I can't remember exactly. I kind of just thought about it as I was bringing this story up. But there's some secret U.S. spying program targeted top Venezuelan officials flouting international law. And at the same time that the U.S. was kind of going through its like January 6th insurrection, Venezuela was kind of going through the same thing. So we think maybe the CIA was running operations down in Venezuela to overthrow their government. We saw all the large mass protests on Twitter, but I guess the U.S. spy program was trying to infiltrate these officials, and they were planning drugs and trying to get like some Oconus lure sex worker blackmail stuff going on, just so they can kind of tarnish these officials' images. What's your opinion on what's going on in Venezuela? Are we trying to set up some pipelines down there? What's going on exactly?
Actually, this is why I take Lyft, because you get a lot of interviews you don't think you're going to get. I actually interviewed a young man had just come from Venezuela, and I asked him why he left. And Maduro and Chavez, bad deal. It's a horrible economy. Now, I'm not saying the U.S. hasn't cut off trade and so forth and made it difficult with them, the dirty oil and all that, but this is Venezuela's problem. Is they should stop being on their own and then, get in. Now, they were one of the original members of BRICS, if I remember. But there's just too much oil. They've now, with offshore discoveries, there's just too much oil. You get into the Banassis area there with Bonaire, with all those oil companies. Abaco has the oil company, Curacao has the oil company. There's just too much oil, and they don't want these guys in there, and they're going to flip this country. They're going to get the oil. I mean, this is one of those things where you can say it's like a Gaddafi thing, live it up, before the revolution, but it's going to happen, and you're going to get flipped,
Hamish is saying that there's Venezuela has a role with the immigration at the border. We saw Mike Johnson come out yesterday and say 700,000 immigrants have come over the border since he's taken over as Speaker of the House. Is that just more drug and money laundering as well, trying to use the people as mules to bring stuff over from Venezuela? And I've also seen that they like the World Bank has projected Venezuela instead of one of these E7 countries by like 2030 to 2050, Venezuela will be a G7 country because of the oil production they have. So you are right on point with that, George Webb. But
so I think that Michael Yon and the Darien Gap and Bannon and all these guys, Brett Weinstein, the Darien Gap this, the Darien Gap that, and Darien Gap, I think on the Panamanian border. My brother was in Panama. He got shot down in Nicaragua, or forced down. Spent time behind a wire there. I'm pretty familiar with the geography. That's a long ass way from the U.S. border, and if they're bringing Chinese folks in there in a military operation, they're building bridges. It's not for invading America. It's for keeping the Panama Canal. It's the same reason the U.S. was around the Panama Canal. It's for the oil interests in the Venezuela area to make sure that China has a force that can go enforce. You're going to have a U.S.-China joint venture in that area off the north of South America. It's just too much oil, but you can't let it. You have to have security as well. So they're trying to make this Darien Gap thing. If I wanted to bring people in, in the United States, I'd bring them into, along the U.S. border. I wouldn't be going to the Darien Gap. You know, that's a long way for people to walk. You got to walk across 4 countries, 4 borders, right? It doesn't make any sense. And I like Michael Yon, but it doesn't make any sense. It makes a lot more sense that there's a security force in it. The Rockefellers have been very interested in this since Nelson Rockefeller ran the Inter-America. The Inter-America was to try to identify oil resources for the U.S. Navy, and they ended up selling this oil out of Panamania and Panama and Panamanian tankers to the Nazis. So this goes all the way back to that period of time. And when I see a Rockefeller spokesman like Brett Weinstein going down there and talking about the Chinese camps with Tucker Carlson, it does not compute. It's about the oil. It's not the Darien Gap operation. And if they keep doing this, I'm going to keep calling it out. This is a psych op to protect this oil.
So this is more the what was the Belt and Road Project a little bit. You know, our original show was Biden's Belt and Road. Is
you can see the straws. There's the pipelines or the straws, and that's how you get the oil out. And you can see going over toward right where it says Puerto Jose. That's a key straw, if you will. And then over there in Amue is another key straw. The pipelines are your straws. Those are going to be the places where you have security forces, and you want to vector those forces from a country that's a friendly country. We have a long-term relationship with Panama. We're there for another 100 years, even though I can't remember what we signed the lease, but it was a 99-year lease. It's a large U.S. military presence. It's a safe place, whereas putting the forces in Venezuela doesn't make any sense because Venezuelans aren't going to let you build bases there, right? So there's going to be an overthrow here. There's no question about it. This is how you do it. You build up on the borders. Now you could say, well, Brett Weinstein and Tucker Carlson and all these other people, they're supposed to build up this border fear to hide this. Okay, fine. But I don't have time to play those games and just like, you know, let them go ahead and talk about the Darien Gap and Michael Yon. It's this is the juice here. And they, in terms of geopolitics, they think if we don't control this, we lose control of the BRICS, of the currency. We can control the petrodollar. We can lose a lot of upheaval, a lot of things in our IMF projections that we've been doing.
So it's like there's sanctions being put on like the Russian oil, so this is our way of controlling the Venezuelan.
We're bringing in the Venezuelan oil. We're bringing in the dirty oil. I went to the refinery in Texas. We're bringing it in and leaving light sweet crude from the Eagle Gap or Eagle Crest. I covered it 7 years ago in Texas. We're leaving that sit. Right, we're shipping that out, and we're taking this real dirty sulfurous oil, especially in this area to the Maracaibo. That's real dirty oil, and we're bringing it in. We're subsidizing the Venezuelans for this reason, and we're going to flip this country. This is a Cuba attached to a continent. This is a big Cuba, but Cuba with a lot of oil.
Is there, I know it's pretty close to Epstein Island there. Was there maybe some pit stops to do some DNA research there?
A long way away to pit stop.
That's a long submarine ride.
Yeah, it's a long submarine ride. But yeah, not so much there. But, you know, going to the countries. I've never been to Venezuela. I've been to Colombia. I went to the Colombian government with the Assange thing. But I've never been to Venezuela, but I've talked to many people who are coming there, and there's just no opportunity, no hope. I talked to Cubans also in Florida, and there's no hope, right? So they're coming here for better opportunities. So all that's true. I just wish we would do the flips above the board like Kennedy wanted to do it. Organization of American States, go in there and negotiate rather than somebody flipping it and for private interests like Sullivan and Cromwell. I just wish we would do it above board and say, look, we've got to, you know, we got to do something about this. You know, this is Banana Republic, and it's going downhill fast.
All right, George Webb, that is the last. It's not the last story, but we'll let you finish up there. It's I'll let you get back to it. Thank you for coming on the show on this beautiful Friday afternoon.
Can I ask you one favor, Andy? I have one story summary that's
okay.
40-minute. It's a 40-minute summary of the first 3 shows, or the first 7 shows. So the first 7 shows were like, 2 hours apiece, 14 hours.
Mm-hmm.
People say, oh, how do I catch up? And I said, well, I did a 40-minute show summary that will get you the first 10 episodes of 2 hours a pop. So maybe we'll have that for the next show.
I'm
But
trying to find it right now as you're talking. I know you post a lot on Twitter.
It's me, and then there's a big white space to the right. It says Neighborhood Network News. So
Is it on your Rumble?
No, it's on my Twitter. It's on my Twitter.
Your Twitter.
Yeah, I posted a lot lately, so maybe it's buried a little bit. But anyway, here's the way to catch up, if you will, and it'll go through all the original. You mentioned Epstein. We talk about Epstein and the DNA. We talk about the 4 billionaires there and everything. We get into all the folks that are going to the island that nobody ever talks about, and it's always they're talking about movie stars and little kids being abducted and stuff. And the juice is in the billionaires. That's what you want to watch coming and going from the island, and you want to watch the there it is. Yeah, play a little bit of this so people can. Yeah.
Well, we got an hour. I can just let it roll for the last 40 minutes of the show here, George.
I would, Andy, because it's a way for everybody to catch up, and that way people will go, oh, we could. I'm willing to do stop action if you want to do stop action.
All right, let me set this up, and I think it is set up actually. Let me make sure the audio is shared. I don't know if I can share the audio, but let's rock and roll. Here's you can find this on George Webb's Twitter. News summary of a YouTube censored videos for new Neighborhood News Network. And let me play a little transition here. What's that?
A lot of them have been removed already. So that's why.
Yeah, we've had some of these videos been removed off of our new Neighborhood News Network, like always. So I'm going to play a little transition here, and I'm going to let the video play. So this is the summary playing after the.
Trump does, we're not doing the shows on the politics. We're saying if Trump does win, what do you have left? How do you, if you're the CIA guy who's the station chief or you're running the CIA, how do you stop Trump now? If you're FBI counterintelligence, how do you stop Trump? We had Crossfire Hurricane. We know this happens. We had MI6 with Richard Dearlove and Christopher Stevens. We know this happens. Christopher Steele. Christopher Stevens too, assassination. We know assassination happens. We know that these CIA programs, Crossfire Hurricane gets fired up even a year and a half before the election, and then gets turned over to the FBI with the last 4 months to go, almost seamless with all the people going. You can bring in as many operatives that you want from overseas, bring in the Russians, even though they're Ukrainians, call them Russians, even though they're Rockefeller Russians, even though they're DuPont Russians, Jacob Raskov Russians, that's okay. Just call them Trump Russians. You can do every kind of dirty trick in the book, right? They did all these things, and we've said this. So we're looking them to turn up the heat a little bit, another couple of turns of the screw here in terms of intensity. We saw a live exercise last time with a Disease X1. And the point I made earlier today was what comes after 1, 2, Disease X2. We outlined a R&D blueprint, a predictive document that said what the next 5 Disease X's were going to be. We told you Jeremy Farrar from the Wellcome Trust, Rockefeller sponsorship all the way back to the first days of the WHO. They basically just changed the nameplate and push out Wellcome Trust and push in WHO so that they can get public money to pay for the Wellcome Trust's library and cabinet of drugs that they want to basically monetize, right? So we told you Jeremy Farrar and the person getting all the bids, Virginia Benassi at WHO. We told you Ira Longini was the one doing the mass formation psychosis, the 20 million dead, the Neil Ferguson and Imperial College with the 20 million dead. All of that was practice. As Ellen Iverson says, it was practice, right? It's a live exercise. Not a lot of people really die. Some people die in New York. They stack them up in meat slabs outside a hospital in Brooklyn for the mass formation psychosis there. They create the 10th city in Central Park to create the mass formation psychosis there. They bring in the USS Comfort ship to create the mass formation psychosis there. They bring in Jacob Javits Center to create the mass formation psychosis there. It's all in New York. You can get around with one CNN van around to all that mass formation psychosis. You have the mayor of New York with the Cuomos, the CNN, and then the Governor Cuomo getting an Emmy for his performance in mass formation psychosis. Who knew? Who knew the Emmys would come up with a whole new award for mass formation psychosis? So we saw all that. I think that's practice. As Ellen Iverson would say, I think that's practice leading up to what's coming up, which is game time. This is going to be much more serious. They're bringing out the big tools. They're bringing out the big guns. This is no longer practice. This is going to be the H5N1 guns, the maybe H7N9, I doubt it. H5N1 is the one we've looked at. We've looked at the genome. We've looked at H1N1, which was killed 30 million, 10 to 30 million. We've looked at the genes specifically that caused the death, that caused the syncytia, that caused the adherence, that caused the cytokine storms. We've looked at the interleukins. We've looked at the interferon beta. We've looked at all these things and in detail, right? And looked at how that got transferred over to H5N1 by Kawa Oka at University of Wisconsin, by the Erasmus lab with Ron Fauchier and Koopmans and all the gang, and how it got weaponized. These things don't happen by themselves, right? H5N1, a bird flew for millennia, right? And then all of a sudden it's election time. Oops, now we've got new things that never existed before, and new transmogrification, new combining, new transposons, new who knew it ever could all come together right before the election so fortuitously, and yet it did. These are obviously things that have been engineered previously, and they're being introduced as new, novel, surprising things. And now they're going to be rolled out to you in a clockwork-like manner. Some might even say a clockwork orange-like manner to terrorize you. So moving ahead here, you'll see that there was 6 episodes. We only got to 6 episodes. We weren't even doing a daily show before we got smashed. But there was, you'll see we did an episode going backwards in time here. Let's go to, just click on the neighborhood news. Right, what a nice logo that Andy did there. And then you can see that right here, it's a little bit hard to understand in terms of the interface. You've got, of course, that's always nice when you get a playback error when you're trying to just play a 22-second video. You know YouTube's in your corner, punching for you. You can't even get a 22-second spinner video. You can't even get the 22-second spinner video to play. It knocks you down on the 22-second spinner. But anyway, we'll go over to videos. You'll see there. Oops, they listed it. They came up that time. I haven't clicked it yet, though. And then if you do finally get over to live, then you're going to get what's left of the channel, what's left of the decimation. You'll see there's only 4 videos left out of the 6. And it's just probably a matter of time before any of this. They probably just... I think the reason why they knock down just serially first is to get you to put more time, effort, energy, blood, sweat, and tears, so that when they do take it all down, again, it has more of a psychological impact. But anyway, we're only 2 down, but still, you stay up all night, you get up early in the morning, you work all day, you do all the research, you got hundreds of people all over the world sending you information, you're calling, you're checking, you're verifying, you're validating. You're doing all this work, and that's all the behind the scenes that goes into making the show. And then when the show comes out, it's kind of like, your little Venus de Milo there. You're doing all your perfect detail work to finish the show. And then when somebody comes in, it's just like a crazed idiot coming in with a sledgehammer and destroying it.
then there goes the Venus de Milo. There went the Pieta. Oh, there went Mother and Child, Madonna. And Da Vinci's watching it all. That's the other part, which is we have to watch all this happen in front of us. So it's a very troubling thing. But the good news here is 4 still remain. 4 still remain, and you can get there via Neighborhood News. And I think there are 4 stories that, again, are all unique. The 4 that they left, even what little is left, sort of like, you go to the Forum in Rome and you look around and you go, Temple of Apollo. Oh, here's the Hall of Justice. Oh, here's the Roman Senate. Oh, here's the Circus Maximus over there. Here's that. There was something great there. Even though it's decimated, you knew that there's the footprint of a great civilization here, right? There's a footprint of some great content here, even though there's only 4 pillars left. But all the stories have been forgotten by mainstream media, denied by mainstream media, attacked by mainstream media and alternative media for all that, copied, some of all those verbs in the same day, denied, copied, criticized, undermined, stolen, all in one day, sometimes. And I think they represent 4 really great stories. But this whole the big idea, before I go to the videos, of Epstein, the whole idea of Epstein, and you've heard me say it before, not just child trafficking, not just compromise on top of child trafficking, but much bigger, broader objectives for this mega group. Of course, you've got Les Wexner, and you've got Max Fisher, and you've got the Bronfmans, and you've got the mega group. You've got Rupert Murdoch, and you've got all the people in the Atlantic Council working for them, helping to effectuate this big picture goal of making tremendous amounts of money off war technology, basically. Take all the DARPA, privatize it, make tremendous amounts of cash, come up with mass formation psychosis, be able to pump it up the stock market at will, milk it like a cow, and then we all get everything we want in terms of military secrets that we can shop to Israel and then shop to the rest of the world, give to Israel maybe, and then shop to the rest of the world to create all kinds of instability around the world, and then repeat. After that's one cycle's done, then you just hit the button again and just repeat for another one, right? If you don't get that idea about Jeff Epstein, especially what they were doing on the island with regards to DNA, with regards to the DNA library, the big data, looking at various pieces of the genome and looking at the pieces that they could exploit, looking at immortality, looking at paths to longevity, looking at all these things regarding DNA and the inside track that they had because of their connections in the military behind the scenes to DARPA. They were able to get the inside track on part of the genome that was still secret 20 years later. They were the inside track by falsely accusing Ivans to be able to sequence 200 of the versions of anthrax that was developed by the Russians. They got all the Russian winnings, the takings, the spoils of the Cold War. Thank you. Plus all the uranium. A guy named Rodney Fisk, it all ends up going to South Africa, right? Let's see. Now, I think we were in the Cold War for 75 years, and for 60 years. We were fighting the Russians. We were building the missile silos. We were building the bunkers. We were building the long-term, long-range bombers. We were building the satellites. We were building all the various decoding and encryption capability. We were building we built the bomb. We built all the bio projects. So when the war is over, right, after 50 years with the Soviets, let's see, 45 until 92, whatever that, 47 years. Winner, chicken dinner. We get the stuff, right? We won. You guys collapsed. We won. We get the 20,000 missiles from you. You take out the highly enriched uranium and unscrew it from the missiles, and you send it to us, and it goes to Ohio. It goes to a place called Piketon, Ohio. That's where it should go. Oopsie, oopsie, oopsie. What do we have here? We have people in Ohio calling George Webb and saying, it ain't getting here.
oopsie, 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 what's going on there, right? And that's my first clue that there is the mega group, Les Wexner, Columbus, Ohio. There's something going on here, that this is being intercepted. We find out only a month before that, a guy had told us it's all being done on these original BlackBerries that was to negotiate in the Senate for the Iran nuclear deal. But we've been using them ever since Libya. We've been doing energy deals with Ukraine. We've been doing energy deals with China. But we didn't kill anybody. That was Hillary. She was the one killing everybody with these things. We didn't kill anybody. We just did energy deals. Ukraine, this is the Biden advisor talking, right? And he had the chops, and we had a second witness to these things. So we have a good idea that we're onto something here. It turns out to be bios as well. Ooh, nukes and bios from the old Soviet Union. DNC gets their hands on them. Oopsie, oopsie, oopsie. And then they start dealing them off to their friends. And then they start taking the kickbacks. Oopsie, oopsie, oopsie. And then George sues the DNC for that, right? People want to like somehow take all the people that were critically involved in providing the critical witnesses and the critical physical evidence, and who wanted to go and risk their lives to get this information. They want to go spin these yarns on these shows. They're up to 11 now, saying nothing about the critical thing, which is these guys in the deep state are getting the stuff from the old Soviet Union. And then they ain't giving it to where it should go, to the winners, where it should be going to Piketon, and it should be going to Dugway Arsenal and other places for bioweapons repositories, and it ain't. It's stopping in Ukraine with a guy named Kolomoisky, and before that, a guy named Mogilevich. And then they're dealing it out and making a commission to all their friends, as well as putting it in their pocket for Israel, putting it in their pocket for South Africa, putting it in their pocket for Ukraine. That's the story we were on. And it's still a great story because it's still right now happening right now in the Congress. It's like, Hunter Biden, could we review your expense account one more time on the trip to Schenectady? It seemed like you stayed at a Holiday Inn Plus. That was over government per diem. You were supposed to be at $92 a night. It's $98. Good job, Representative Comer. Good job going after those single bucks. I don't want to say the word dumbass, but you've got to go for the thing that takes you to the network. You got to go to the communication devices that take you to the codex, to the nerve center. We go to the nerve center to get all the fingerlings that go out to all the people, and that's how you get to the bottom of the corruption. Subpoena the Biden BlackBerries? Anyone? Hello? Bueller? Comer? Comer? Are you awake, Comer? Are you paying attention, Comer? So this is the thing. This is the thing that people don't realize about Jeff Epstein. That first episode, that the Billionaire Bunkhouse, that show is really all about all the billionaires that just littered the skies with wingtips down in Little St. James. They were just filling the skies with every scientist you can think about, every billionaire mega media owner, every billionaire banker, every Russian money launderer, Ukrainian money launderer, every scientist, Nobel Prize scientist, or potential nominee Nobel scientist, just littering the skies. And we bring the juice, we bring the proof. And again, it's something that no one, for whatever reason, omission or laziness or lack of aptitude, or it's not clickbait, or whatever reason, they can't say Jeff Epstein, DynCorp, State Department, diplomatic communities, weapons dealing, tail numbers, helicopters, planes. For some reason, that's impossible. I've been trying 6 years to get people to say that. But that's what Billionaire Bunkhouse is all about. Look at the people who good.
I was going to say, just pause. Ooh, what happened to my video? Just pausing it for a second. You can still find Billionaire Bunkhouse on Rumble. Little St. James Billionaire Bunkhouse with George Webb. So He's talking about us getting our channel taken down on YouTube. So make sure you go over to Rumble and subscribe as well. I think we definitely get more views on Rumble nowadays. Not YouTube. We're like in the thousands and thousands on Rumble. So thank you to Rumble for actually hosting us and not taking any of our content down. But George, you got any comments? I'll get before I get back to the video.
You saw me in a candid moment of what I normally do. Constant research. Yeah. But I do think this.
And we'll get, I don't know why here we go.
Longevity studies. They were doing longevity pathways, immortality, lining people up with hemagglutinin matches, HLA compatibility matrix for organ donations. I don't know if they had adrenochrome. I can't prove that, but I know that they were doing the Dr. Eric Braveman along with the Duchess of York. The Duchess of York. That doesn't sound like a 14-year-old girl. Fergie wasn't 14. She was the Duchess of York. She's in all the coronations. She was there when, during the wedding of Princess Diana and so forth. She's on all the People magazines. Pretty high-level person. How do the page sixers, the tabloid rags of New York and London that Bob Maxwell owned, and then Ghislaine, and then Vicky Ward and all of them. How do they miss this? Remember when Fergie was gaining a little bit of weight and you smashed her face all over People magazine and said, "Oh, Fergie, getting a little plump." Or when Andy was Randy. Remember when Andy was Randy? When he was down there doing the Falklands War? And he was a little Randy and he's stepping out on Fergie. That was big news. That was big news to you guys. Well, what about Fergie doing the Path Foundation with Jeff Epstein on Epstein Island? Crickets. Nothing. Nothingness. Not a word to be heard, right? Not a word to be heard. So we're not going to hide it. We're not going to hide it. And sometimes when you do stop actions, you don't pick fortuitous frames like that one. But we're not speculating. Andy does the voice performance here. Andy DeBali, my co-host. And it's all transcript. This is the one that Megyn Kelly is going to promise you tomorrow. Megyn Kelly is promising you you're going to hear Jeff Epstein in Jeff Epstein's voice, because they've taken this script and they've set it to AI with 11 labs. You're going to hear it tomorrow. It's going to break. There's going to be a new drop of documents tomorrow. Well, you don't have to wait on that one. Boom, chugga-lugga. Kabango, kabango, kabango. Page after page. You can see how far I'm going through this episode. It's chock-a-block. You can't, it's testimony every which way. Let me see if I can get in here, George, and get a little bit of things that aren't just hard-hitting receipts. Showtime. There is no speculation, right? And if we get a little bit later into this, we do on this show. You can see all the graphics, right? It's just graphic after graphic, right? Farkhouse. Bruce Ivins says he's the anthrax killer and produced a list of 10 things that Farkhouse is the anthrax killer. I don't know if he is or he isn't, but why does Scott Decker, the FBI, hide that from you when Bruce Ivins says this in November of 2001? He says he's a couple of train stops away from where the letters were. I've never been to New Jersey, he says. This guy is at GE Healthcare, and he does all my aerosolized anthrax so that we can aerosolize the monkeys back here. I never touch. I no touch the highly refined anthrax. No touchy. No touchy, the high quality cut and dried to extremely fine exacting specifications. I don't touch that. Where they do that is in Battelle Labs in Columbus, where I don't go, and I've never been, right? There's two guys here between Stephen Hatfield and Farkhouse that do have access to those places. And they're the ones who do the aerosolization now and did the understudy under the guy who did the aerosolization. He had a book
a blue book that he carried around like it was nuclear football. And he said aerosolization was the name on the book. It was the secrets of the Cold War. It was the takings of all the Cold War, aerosolization. Who's going to bring in that story, right? Not only exonerate somebody who was a hero, who outed this person a couple of weeks after the Anthrax 11 attacks. And the story, we're done here. We're done. Thanks, Bruce. Gosh, why did we call so many? You know that phone tree we had the other night to get the FBI guys in the story? Why did we bother with that? We should have just went over to Ivins. He named all the guys that were involved. We talked to you about the murders and how of the 5 murders in Anthrax, only 2 of them are tied to letters. That's a hell of a thing for a letter bomber. That's like saying Jack the Ripper had 2 prostitutes he murdered, or people they were trying to characterize as prostitutes that were really informants being used in the British Parliament, but can't out everybody's secrets right now. And then 3 of them were in Saskatchewan. And then we closed the case here at Scotland Yard. 2 of the victims in London and 3 of them in Saskatchewan. Well, I'm here for, let's say, the London Times. Did you ever place the killer in Canada ever? No, never did. Never got around to it. He never was in New Jersey. Not only did he pass 2 lie detector tests, not only did he not only was he helping the FBI actively trying to get to the people who had access to the cut and dried, highly refined anthrax, not only that was suppressed, right? His hair didn't match, no fingerprints, the handwriting didn't match, 2 passed lie detector tests, on and on and on. So we bring you these stories just as an aside. This was just this was just a cherry. Then we threw in Sandy Hook to say, how does this 5th person, the 5th victim, is a mile away from Farkow's location? And Ivins told him that in November of 2001. What I'm saying is Ivins is saying, hey, there's people here that are taking the things that we do here at, they're taking the things that we do here at Fort Detrick and they're exfiltrating it. And they're running their own program for the CIA. That's what Ivins is really saying. And that's why Ivins was really killed. And I'm not saying Farkas did it. I'm not saying Hatfield did it. They're operators. They're CIA guys. There's 5 or 6 or 10 or 15 or 30 guys involved in this, and maybe women. I'm not saying that isn't true. But Ivins, the reason he dies is because he outs that. That's why we pick up that thread, because that same thread of Anthrax 9/11 players is going to be the same crew as the Corona 911. And they're going to be the same crew for this next shooter that's about ready to drop. And that's going to be Disease X. 2, the second tick of the clock. All right. So Andy has great graphics. You remember me getting hit by the shark twice, lemon shark. I had 2 shark encounters. First one was the biggie, the big dog. It almost swam between my legs, but standing in between Prince Andrew's Island of St. John's and anyway, I was right between British Virgin Islands and U.S. Virgin Islands. It's not very far. Going there tells you everything. Also, I was at Biden Island, and there's line of sight from James Biden's house. Line of sight is the most secure form of communications because it's hardest to intercept. It doesn't radiate out. Line of sight to where? From Little St. James? Jeff Epstein's island. So if you're a vice president with top secret level codes, and you need to send somebody what they call an op code for an operations code, that's how you get into the computer and run the operation. That's how you do it. That's episode 1. Wow. That's episode 1, right? That was a hell of an episode. Now, remember, I'm going to send you to YouTube in a little bit. And you're going to say, oh, that's good, because this won't be here long. This has got a short half-life. This has got a less of a half-life than all that missing uranium that you were trying to find in Bikton. So we'll go to Ramaswamy here. And what Ramaswamy does, and he's already out, but what Ramaswamy does is in this little scrum here, this little press scrum, he hits on the 4 stories that we really, at Neighborhood News and before that, before I was with Neighborhood News, we really knocked it out of the park. He's basically saying the January 6th wasn't because people were doing an insurrection. If it was, they would have brought guns, right? Kind of makes sense, or at least pitchforks or axe handles. I think there was one guy who brought an axe handle. He got 4.5 years. So it's not an insurrection, right? People brought nothing, right? So what was it really? And what Ramaswamy is doing here is he's saying, hey, there's 3 stories that you guys did in the news. There's 3 stories that you guys lied as MSM and alternative media. The first one's Trump Russia. Again, nobody covered Trump Russia like we did. Crossfire Hurricane, the people that were put into the thing, Joe Schmitz. We ran down Carter Page at the State Department all the way back to the UN peacekeeping in Western Africa. We ran down George Papadopoulos in his work on the East Med pipeline, showed them all as actors in this sort of school play to try to create the Trump Russia. We ran down Butina, we went to all these places. And we go through the Substacks and so forth. But we nail Trump Russia. Who's my number one nemesis for Trump Russia, Trump Russia, Trump Russia? The guy who literally says a 14-year-old is a Russian agent because he does the video of Trump face planting the CNN logo. The kid who did that, Donnie O'Sullivan says is a Russian agent. Okay, that guy. He's my nemesis going all the way back to Port of Charleston, where I'm saying, hey, the DNC is the one who's taking all the uranium and they're holding it in Ukraine and they're dealing it out to their friends and they're getting kickbacks. That's why they sent Donnie out for me back then, right? But now Donnie's going after me for another thing because I'm saying they're doing a live exercise, Donnie, and it's U.S. State Department again. Remember the same guys who were making the uranium stop in Ukraine, the same guys who are making the bioweapons stop in Ukraine? Well, they're making the truth stop in Wuhan because they're running a deal with the Chinese in a program called USAID Predict. They're telling this in a nationally televised interview, right? And they're working on ways of weaponizing or turning down the weaponization from the old Soviet Union of things, again, coming from the old Soviet Union, still about bioweapons. They're turning it down so they can create mass formation psychosis with things like H5N1, disease X, number 2, coming your way. Right? Again, we're trying to blow the top of this. And we say it's the disease X is the 5 things in the WHO R&D document, March 2020. March 2020, here it is, right? We're at this charrette house when it happens. I'll press play here. We're at the charrette house when it happens. This is where all the magic occurs. So the beautiful piece of this is he's saying, Ramaswamy's saying, you didn't look into the real origins of the coronavirus. People think it's military. People think it's a lab leak. You didn't look into the air conditioning filters on September the 11th. You didn't look at all the digital detection that Huff had later confirmed. You didn't look into all the research that later Drastic did and Rixey did and Billy Bosticson did. You didn't look into the Brown University study that said it started in August. You didn't look into the Harvard University study that said it started in August. You didn't look at the studies, the University of Siena study for blood in Italy that showed coronavirus antibodies in September and October. That's before December. Last time I checked, even for people in Italy, right? You didn't check into the Spanish thing where we had antibodies being raised in March and April for coronavirus. So you guys, right? What Ramaswamy is saying is you guys got an F on that one too. And you're still too stupid or stubborn or both to admit that you were wrong. A lot of people admitted they were wrong on Trump Russia. And the third one he talks about, this third story he talks about is and I go into this deep. I go into all the Russian folks that came over and were witnesses, for the whole Anthrax 911 thing and how they generated the fear and so forth to get all the bioweapons and so forth for DTRA. But you guys have lied, and lied. with the Hunter Biden laptop was the third thing. And again, we trumped the Hunter Biden laptop because Hunter Biden laptop makes you just about Hunter. Just about Hunter, right? If we call it Hunter Biden laptop. If we call it Hunter Biden BlackBerry, now we say, well, where is the BlackBerry connected to? Oh, the U.S. Senate Sergeant of Arms into a server. The laptop's now a server. The server's connected to at least 45 different people in a shadow network on Capitol Hill that's been there since 1999. Ooh, now it sounds like we're getting at the Gordian knot of the deep state. Now we're getting to the root ball. We're not clipping a little flower off and then pinning it to our lapel like James Comer and saying, oh, I proved that Hunter Biden did hose and blow. I proved Hunter Biden did hose and blow. What the hell good is that going to be? How's that taking down the deep state? Hunter did hose and blow. Look at me, reelect me. Yeah, it might help him get reelected in Kentucky or wherever, but it's not going to help the people of the United States of America and all the people that have died, right? That have gone to trying to defend the country, etc., whose lives are wasted. That's not going to help them. You know, they don't care. Those families of the people with people that have died along the way don't care. They want somebody to go after the root knot. They want somebody to go after the root of this thing and yank it, yank it up by its root. That's this story is the reason why Ramaswamy is on the head of this is Ramaswamy hits those big three things. And then he hits January 6th saying it was a fake, right? There I am. There's people out there now on their 11th show. They keep talking about, well, George introduced us to this guy, and then George introduced us to that guy, and they're all morons. But I then went on my own and did 28 shows, and those were my 28 most successful shows, and that was 6 years ago. And then I did nothing for the next 6 years, and I was a failure, and I just basically tried to sue George and intervene in George's lawsuits at CNN, right? And now, since I've proven to myself I cannot do content over the last 6 years, I'm going to go back to the original stories George gave me 6 years ago when he was trying to help me build my channel. And that's all well and good. I don't really care about playing those clicks games, but I do take umbrage, and that's also a tool that was used from the old Vault 7, right? That they were planted to try to make Trump look like he was communicating with the Russians. That's from the Vault 7. But they tried to say that I didn't know or hadn't talked about H7N9. And I spent almost 18 days with the woman whose son died of H7N9. We believe died of H7N9. And there, the roses I'm holding in my hand in that Navy graveyard are for her son. So I don't want to hear anything from those guys. Go ahead and do 500 shows, you know, on content that I generated in 2016, 2017. It's ridiculous. I don't know who follows you, you know, pay your pot bills. But you can see here that I was very front and center, and we went right to the Salk Institute. We don't hide from anybody. We got threatened by a guy who was the head of the MQ-9 drone program with General Atomics. They tried to throw us out of there 3 times. They sent over a hitman from, at least he said he was from not Jimmy Hoffa, but John Gotti, right? Hey, he says, hey, I really like you guys, and you know, it's nice having all your faces memorized here. I just want to let you know I work for John Gotti. That's what we had to deal with when we went there. For me to do that H7N9 show, and remember, I do 3 shows and 3 field trips with Michael J. Bennett, right, who has 3 patents with Bob Malone and Sina Bavari, with quiescing RNA, silencing RNA. Who talks about silencing RNA? The thing that they were working on before mRNA, right? When they realized silencing RNA wouldn't work, and they decided to flip it the other way. And it was causing all kinds of side effects. So they said, oh, well, if it's caused the side effects, let's say that's a benefit, right? Meeting with the people whose name's on the patent, going to the Navy Health Research Services, so close that they're trying to shut us down. We went to Coronado Island. We went to all the places where they were vectoring these things in the 7th Fleet. Remember, that's where the Grand Princess is. That's where the Diamond Princess is. That's where the air filters and Michael Callahan to spin up the false narrative with the test kits to say that
the coronavirus is 5 times more pathogenic and transmissive than it really is, right? That all out of San Diego, that whole operation. And I'm holding the H7N9 roses in my hand. In my hand. You can see them in the video. In my hand. So don't say I didn't cover H7N9. But I'm telling you, I look and see where did they take the H1N1. If you're worried about the next disease X, and Tedros has said disease X, Klaus Schwab saying disease X, everybody at Davos saying disease X. We're done with our Davos now. A couple days ago, what a successful Davos. Bill Gates. What's the big takeaway? What's the big takeaway? Disease X. Disease X. It's coming. If that isn't enough metadata, I don't know what is. When Bill Gates says it, you know it's been dumbed down to a cue card. Yeah, this isn't a genius move here. You don't have to be Kreskin to understand that disease X is coming, right? You just got to predict what it's going to be and get ahead of the curve. So you got to know who Fauci is. These two idiots, the two clowns that I gave content to 6 years ago, they still haven't figured out who Fauci is. Fauci from Erasmus Lab also did work on H7N9. If you're such an H7N9 expert, open a freaking book. Would it kill you? Would it kill you to open a freaking book? Take the glasses off, take the hat off, maybe get a shave every once in a while, and open a book and read about gain of function. Ooh, that might help. But you'll find that H799, and we looked at it, this kid died from it. It's horrible. The Navy aviator was a top aviator on the, I can't remember which aircraft carrier, I think he was on the Ford. Horrible story, but we went there and we covered H79 up close and personal, okay? So I don't want to hear anything about I'm playing favorites or whatever, but H5N1 is where the juice is. Hong Kong to 1997. Isn't it interesting? Things around for millennia, this virus, right? Influenza. And then all of a sudden, just like the furin cleavage site, all of a sudden, we have new things like a furin cleavage site to make it pathogenic, right? The PR8, Paul Cottrell said this in February 2020. PR8, how does PR8 get from H1N1? Remember, it goes after military age men. It's a W curve, children, but also military age men and men also older people. H1N1, so does H5N1 when it's been weaponized. I wonder who would want to take out military aged men. You mean when they spray the Trump rally, they don't want to just get the old geezers like me? They also want to get the military aged men? Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Yeah, they want the military age men. They're going to use something goes after military age men. These other two guys with 11 shows going over stuff I gave them in 2016 haven't seemed to mention the fact that there's no W curve for H7N9. It doesn't kill military age men. So how the hell is that a bioweapon? Just think about it. Just give it a little bit of time and think about it. Come on, man. To quote Joe Biden. Okay, there's so much in these shows. It's not just. I'm doing such a cursory job in going over all this, but we, it's like January 6th. We go there to Fort Bragg. We show the buses. We pan the camera over. We show Shelton there. We show Petraeus. We said it comes from 1999. The OSCE Blackberries. We said this has been a sham ever since those Blackberries were given to the KLA. We said they just keep getting put in a bag for the next op. They keep getting put in a black bag for the next black bag op. Come on. That's what's happening here, right? So we say Jan 6 is going to be another black bag op. We say the Ukrainians are coming. We say it's Elizabeth Rainey. She's on the video before January 6th as a femme fatale saying, won't you patriots come and defend my honor? I'm a damsel in distress. Won't you come and defend me? She doesn't say, and oh, by the way, I'm a captain in 4th Psych Ops, and we got to load these buses up for Peter Strzok.
All right, it was all Foresight Ops operation from the get-go. George Webb, that was a great summary video, breaking down all the stuff that got deleted off the internet on YouTube. So nice job there. Any summaries there? I'm going to put some stuff on the screen showcasing how BlackBerry is still involved with handling the government's cybersecurity with this BlackBerry government solutions. I'm just going to put that on the screen while you talk.
Yeah, BlackBerry's still big in the DoD. They bought a couple of companies so that they could manage endpoints that were other than BlackBerries, so they could manage, iPhones and iPhone tablets and so forth. I can't remember what it's called, Good Point or whatever, but they changed the name of BlackBerry Enterprise Manager to BlackBerry User Endpoint Manager or Endpoint Manager, meaning that you could have a whole bunch of different kinds of devices. And the reason why is the encryption stack. The encryption stack, same thing Dimitri reported way back when from PGP when I was at Network Associates in 2000. They're keeping that encryption stack. And the reason why that's really important is if you have a lot of operatives out there, let's say you've made 10,000 of these, you can't run out to some refugee camp in Sarajevo, where I was, 2 years ago, and say, oh, hey, we're here to do the upgrade. It's very expensive. So you need a server, that will be able to channel all this in. So I don't know if, I know it's called user endpoint manager or end user manager, something along that line.
Yeah, that's what this is, the BlackBerry Government Mobility Suite, and they manage the user endpoint so they can control the data through the cloud. And the only thing we were missing at J6 is our boy Joe Biggs running around with a little BlackBerry phone.
Well, he would be using, we talked about green zone phones I don't know what the encryption stack is for green zone phones, but you would add a little SIM card into the phones that can put a SIM card in, and then green zone phones, you would use that kind of thing. Or there's an encrypted microphones, which probably they wouldn't even use the regular cell phones. They would use these encrypted whisper microphones that the Special Forces uses. And Lee Wilbarger took me through all of that, and how he designed helmets for the Special Forces and stuff. But the big message here is, no pun intended, is they're still very much involved in government services, especially encrypted government services, and especially with the State Department, because like I say, some of these BlackBerries were handed out, let's say in Africa 5 years ago. Now you're going to go drive your Jeep through all the puddles and everything to get to some UN aid station to give the guy the upgrade? Probably not. So you have to have some allowance in your server to take all this stuff in. So they're not out of business yet. A lot of people are sending me business connections of defense contractors to the Johnny Chen. If you remember, Johnny Chen is the first guy who is at SARS. He's patient zero for SARS. He's the one who visits Matt Pottinger in the hotel, right? Or he visits Urbani, the hero of H5N1, the guy who accepted the Nobel Prize for Médecins Sans Frontières and dies from SARS. But Johnny Chen, the previous CEO of BlackBerry, is also named Johnny Chen. Now, you could say, well, is he delivering the BlackBerry so that they can start running, so they can give BlackBerries, to the folks in China or not? Yeah, Johnny Chen's a hard driving businessman, Now, I think this Johnny Chen might have died, but there was,
This is the SARS Johnny Chen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it is interesting how the same name of the guy running the BlackBerry operation, the CEO of the BlackBerry operation, is Johnny Chen. And then Johnny Chen kind of goes away, and I can't remember what Johnny Chen's business was supposed to be, if it was like curtains or something. But he's kind of a mystery guy. So that the story around the death of Urbani is kind of clouded with no follow-up. There's nobody to follow up with, tell me, where he was, before Yeah, Johnny Chen. Just one of those. I mean, Chen's a pretty common name, but it is interesting how they use these names in these operations. And again, if you were going to
It's the
live
Chinese
exercise.
Benassi.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. If you're going to conduct a live exercise, you got to have bodies and you got to have communications to those bodies. There's just no two ways about it. Whether you're pouring something in somebody's ear or whether you're putting something in an air filter or whatever, you got to have bodies and you know, 1,000 talents. You got to have Chinese 1,000 talents. You got to have Shuang Wu's. You got to have Jordan Walkers, and you got to have communications some way or another. That's why I always go for the metadata, the communications. Always, always, always the metadata.
All right, George. Well, that was a great show today. We dug into a lot the first half of the show. Make sure if you're watching now, go back and watch that first half. We get into the Trump punking the perp walk and getting off the March 4th case. We got into his bloody hands. My notebook's not by me, so I forget all the subjects off the top of my head. I'm not a computer like you, Mr. Webb. So go back and watch the first show. We did the summary in the second half of some of the shows that have been taken off the channel. But overall, thank you for your time, George Webb. The home Neighborhood News Network, the home of citizen journalism, is currently, all the hard work is finally paying off, and we're showcasing some wins here on our network. So everyone just keep sending all the links, all the research to @RealGeorgeWebb1 on Twitter. Send us the emails, George Webb. You got one more thing to say before we go here?
I do. The next two cases are going to be really important. They've given up on the first case, so that's the Joe Biggs video pretty much nailed that. The next one's going to be the election interference in Georgia, and then the other one for that is the classified folders case. And again, it's important that the defense puts out their theory, and it has to be simpler than the prosecution's theory. The number one thing you want is a simpler theory, right? If 42 different counties have 42 different problems with 42 different machines simultaneously, and the defense, and that looks like there's some kind of manipulation going on, but then the prosecution says, well, that can't happen because it's too hard to get into the machines, so that couldn't have happened. And then you produce a pen and you hold the pen, no fingerprints, you hold the pen under the button for 5 seconds and it goes into super user mode. That, in the mind of the jury, is, hey, I could see 42 different people having a pen and doing this. That's what took all the machines down. It's impossible that all 42 of those machines could have went down at the same time unless 42 people took a pen. So the pen defense, you want to get down to the jury where there's one sentence. The Trump phone call to Raffensperger happens a lot later. This happens when all the machines go down. That's why Trump calls, because, you know, the West Coast elections are reporting, you know, California's reporting and Alaska's reporting and all this. And Trump's like, hey, why isn't Georgia reporting? Well, the machines are down. Well, how could that happen? How could 42 different places go down simultaneously? Well, how much do 42 pens cost, ladies and gentlemen of the jury? Right? And you want to get the timeline moved back to the machines. They're focusing in on just one of the places where the pen was used and the 16 defendants and the poll workers around that one case. But you want to step back and say, wait a minute, let's go back to how could this have happened? Right? I'm not saying that there was any voting retabulation or anything. I'm just saying that there was havoc created that night, and that's why he got involved. And that exonerates. The same thing is true for the case in the classified folders case. If you bring in if one person brings in classified folders, it's not a crime. If another person on the team, the FBI had a team that went in with high classification level, Q level classification, and they put papers into classified folders, well, that's not a crime either. If a third FBI team comes in and finds those papers on the floor, they're not telling a lie either. But I'm telling you, the special master, I'm telling they put non-classified papers into classified folders. And I know that because I sat in court and watched the fight that they had over somebody who would independently review that, a special master. And they really didn't want that, right? That's the Achilles heel in their thing. So again, just a folder. You mean that you can convict somebody by just throwing classified folders on a floor? A lot of those folders didn't even have papers in them, if you remember. So the pen is your mightier than the sword in the Atlanta case, and your folder is mightier than the sword in the Florida case. Then we'll deal with the New York case later. But those are the next two things to work on. And we're going to do this in Michigan. The insurrection case is gone, but we'll move over to these other two cases in Michigan on the 24th. All right.
All right. The Bomb Theater in Michigan, February 24th through 27th. We are hosting a charrette in Michigan. We're going to be hopefully helping Trump out a little bit more. He's been watching Neighborhood News Network. He's been following suit, and hopefully we can keep leading him in the right direction here at the end of the month. All right, George Webb. It was a great show today. Make sure you go and donate to George Webb. Hit his Twitter up at Real George Webb 1. If you're out there listening, Elon Musk, give George Webb his old Twitter back. Get him his just George Webb Twitter name back, so we don't have to go through all the nonsense.
Give me 2 hours that you gave Alex Jones that you shouldn't have given him.
I agree. You're invited to come on the show as well, Elon Musk, and we can break down some of the work you've been doing. We might pay a little more attention to your $55 billion case if you come on the show, Elon Musk. We'll appreciate you a little more. But at Real George Webb 1 on Twitter, hit that buy me a coffee button, hit that PayPal.me/George Swagert link, or subscribe to his Substack. George Webb, you have a wonderful weekend. And ladies and gentlemen, always remember, we've been going over the show today. It's not the laptops, it's the BlackBerries that always matter.
Started seeing like blackberries, government issued blackberries, government issued blackberries, government issued blackberries. They were blackberries. They were blackberries. They were blackberries. Man, this looks like government issued equipment. Man, this looks like government issued equipment. Man, this looks like government issued equipment. Man, this looks like government issued equipment.